understanding of what these two men were up against in his Democratic National Convention speech. Stuart Alger.
Clouds of suspicion, tides of ill will and intolerance gathered darkly in many places. In our own land, we enjoy indeed a fullness of life greater than that of most nations. But the rush of modern civilization itself has raised for us new difficulties, new problems which must be solved if we are to preserve to the United States the political and economic freedom for which Washington and Jefferson planned and fought. That very word, freedom, in itself and of necessity, suggests freedom from some restraining power. In 1776, we sought freedom from the tyranny of a political autocracy, from the 18th century royalists who held special privileges from the crown. It was to perpetuate their privilege that they governed without the consent of the governed, that they denied the right of free assembly and free speech, that they restricted the worship of God, that they put the average man's property and the average man's life in pawn to the mercenaries of dynastic power, that they regimented the people. And so it was to win freedom from the tyranny of political autocracy that the American Revolution was fought. Since that struggle, however, man's inventive genius released new forces in our land which reordered the lives of our people. The age of machinery, of railroads, of steam and electricity, the telegraph and the radio, mass production, mass distribution, all of these combined to bring forward a new civilization and with it a new problem for those who sought to remain free. For out of this modern civilization, economic royalists carved new dynasties. New kingdoms were built upon concentration of control over material things. Through new uses of corporations, banks, and securities, new machinery of industry and agriculture, of labor and capital, all undreamed of by the fathers, the whole structure of modern life was impressed into this royal service. There was no place among this royalty for our many thousands of small businessmen and merchants who sought to make a worthy use of the American system of initiative and profit. They were no more free than the worker or the farmer. Even honest and progressive-minded men of wealth, aware of their obligation to their generation, could never know just where they fitted into this dynastic scheme of things. It was natural, and perhaps human, that the privileged princes of this new economic dynasty, thirsting for power, reached out for control of government itself. They created a new despotism and wrapped in it the robes of legal sanction. In its service, new mercenaries sought to regiment the people, their labor, their property. And as a result, the average man once more confronts the problem that faced the Minuteman. The hours men and women work, the wages they receive, the conditions of their labor, these had passed beyond the control of the people and were imposed by this new industrial dictatorship. The savings of the average family, the capital of the small businessman, the investments set aside for old age, other people's money. These were the tools which the new economic royalty used to dig itself in. Those who tilled the soil no longer reaped the rewards, which were their right. The small measure of their gains was decreed by men in distant cities. Throughout the nation, opportunity was limited by monopoly. Individual initiative was crushed in the cogs of a great machine. The field open for free business was more and more restricted. Private enterprise, indeed, became too private. It became privileged enterprise, not free enterprise. An old English judge once said, "Necessitous men are not free men. Liberty requires opportunity to make a living decent according to the standard of the time."
All right.
A a living which gives man not only enough to live by, but something to live for.
All right.
For too many of us, the political equality we once had was meaningless in the face of economic inequality. A small group had concentrated into their own hands and almost complete control over other people's property, other people's money, other people's labor, other people's lives. For too many of us, life was no longer free, liberty no longer real. Men could no longer follow the pursuit of happiness. Against economic tyranny such as this, the American citizen could appeal only to the organized power of government. The collapse of 1929 showed up the despotism for what it was. The election of 1932 was the people's mandate to end it. Under that mandate, it is being ended. Today, we stand committed to the proposition that freedom is no half and half affair. If the average citizen is guaranteed equal opportunity in the polling place, he must have equal opportunity in the marketplace.
All right.
These economic royalists complain that we seek to overthrow the institutions of America. What they really complain of is that we seek to take away their power. Our allegiance to American institutions requires the overthrow of this kind of power. In vain, they seek to hide behind the flag in the Constitution. In their blindness, they forget what the flag and the Constitution stand for. Now, as always, they stand for democracy, not tyranny, for freedom, not subjugation, and against a dictatorship by mob rule and the overprivileged alike.
All right.
We do not see faith, hope, and charity as unattainable ideals, but we see them as stout supports of a nation fighting the fight for freedom in a modern civilization. Faith in the soundness of democracy in the midst of dictatorships. Hope renewed because we know so well the progress we have made. Charity in the true spirit of that grand old word, for charity literally translated from the original means love. The love that understands, that does not merely share the wealth of the giver, but in true sympathy and wisdom helps men to help themselves. Governments can err. Presidents do make mistakes. But the immortal Dante tells us that divine justice weighs the sins of the cold-blooded and the sins of the warm-hearted on different scales. Better the occasional faults of a government that lives in the spirit of charity than the consistent omissions of a government frozen in the ice of its own indifference.
All right.
There is a mysterious cycle in human events. To some generations, much is given. Of other generations, much is expected. This generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny.